All right. It looks like I've got everything set up. Everything's going strong. So thank you guys for joining in. I am Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. For those of you on YouTube land, this is my cherry popping experience, if you will. I'm excited to be finally coming onto YouTube world. The issues I was having on Facebook, which brought me to YouTube, was that my videos were getting silenced. Not getting silenced, but getting cut off midstream, causing some heartache, causing some issues. So I decided to take it within my own hands and move to another location. So here I am on YouTube. Thank you guys for joining in. I'm glad that you guys are able to join in, see the stream, whether it is live or coming back for the replay. Thank you guys, regardless of whichever way it goes. I do appreciate the support. I appreciate any dissent, any agreeances, and everything else. I'm just here to really bring about the world of politics, the world of social issues, and everything else that's going on, to be able to help guide the country in essence, towards what the founders wanted, and help grow this country in other ways. So, any issue that goes unheard, or any issue that is only spoken about on the mainstream media, means that you have had, you've been misguided, you've been neglected to hear the entire truth. And so that's what I'm trying to bring you, right? The truth, the bearded truth. And so thank you guys once again for joining in on YouTube as well as on Periscope. Looking forward to the discussion today. This is not the first discussion I've had on a live stream, obviously. So I'm not gonna go back and look at everything. If you guys want to find me on other platforms, you guys can find me on Twitter, Mr. Bearded Truth. Find me on Periscope, Mr. Bearded Truth. Find me on Facebook at /JLyon, JLYON, Bearded Truth. You'll find me on there. Plenty of different sources to find me on, plenty of places to reach me and have discussions, and that's what we are looking for here. So I want to get started off, and there's discussions that have been going on about Alex Jones. He's the one that I really want to start off with because it's an interesting one. It's always been interesting to see the way the Alex Jones situation has been going out. So social media banning him, right? Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. They've been banning, and that's been an issue. That's been an obvious issue. So a lot of people believe that it is not within these companies' rights to do what it is that they did. I disagree. It is well within Facebook's rights to ban people, to censor people, or to silence people. But they're putting themselves into a weird, peculiar situation in which now they're going to own all of the discussions that are happening. All of the content that gets produced on their feeds is getting owned by them coming in and controlling that. So they're putting themselves in a tricky situation, potentially even for legal reasons in the future, but also just on a societal note. We have to understand where the biases are of these big corporations, and we have to utilize the free market, utilize the power of the people, and leave these markets, leave these platforms when they do go against what we want. And so this is going to encourage other people out there that are more in favor of free speech, regardless if they agree with the speech or not, but allowing that free speech to thrive. And that's something I've been advocating for. Opening up a new platform, right? Gab.ai was a big platform that was growing. It was all about freedom of speech. It was all about allowing everyone's voice to be heard in whatever way that they wanted it to be heard. They weren't in favor of censorship. But the problem was they didn't have the infrastructure. They didn't have a way to get their app out to others without utilizing the Apple Store, without utilizing Google Store or the Google Play Store. So that's why that one failed. That's why Gab.ai is kind of a backroom media platform. You can still have freedom of speech there, but it's not readily available for everyone because you can't download it onto your phone. So we, as in the people of America, welcome in NCAA, we, the people of America, need to create the infrastructure. We need to create a platform and an infrastructure. And that's something, if that's within your skill sets, that's something you should be looking at. there is a huge market out there. There's a huge demand for your skills to actually provide to the people what they want. Now, going off on this Alex Jones topic, there's been a false rumor mill that was pushed out there 2 or 3 days ago now. And that was that Alex Jones had a radio station in Austin, Texas, and that one was shut down by the FCC. This has been proven to be false. It was a pirate radio station, so it was a radio station that never went through its certification, never paid for its permits, never paid to actually be a quote-unquote radio station on the airwaves, and they were broadcasting some of Alex Jones's shows. So that's the affiliation between the two. And this was a show that's been going on since 2013, or a radio station that's been going on since 2013. So yes, if we want to talk about on the governmental side of things, right? The FCC is literally there to silence people, to prevent organizations from conducting themselves in the way that they want to. They do kind of in some way silence free speech, and they do somewhat in some capacity silence the freedom of the press. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about what the FCC does. And I'm not gonna go just full on libertarian and just say, look, the government is horrible. Anything the government does is bad, and the FCC, because it's part of the government and because of its silencing of everyone, is a bad thing. But that is true. It is true that the FCC is horrible because of what they do. But there's this idea, right? If the FCC was not there, if the government didn't control these airwaves, we understand that there is a scarcity. There is a scarcity. I haven't seen the Louder or Crowder. So if there's a link to that, if you can send that to me, I'd appreciate it. There's a scarcity of the number of airwaves that are accessible. And so the government, in the pursuance of protecting people, of protecting the market, ensures that everyone pays their fines and follows the rules and follows the regulations, and ensures that, yes, everyone that's on these airwaves has been gone through the porous wall that is the government to enable them to actually espouse their views on the airwaves. I don't see a necessity for it. I understand that there's a scarcity. I understand that there's a finite number of radio stations that you can tune into, and they try to portray this idea that if we had anarchy in this instance, right? If there was no regulation, then everybody would have a channel, so you couldn't flip through. You'd hop in your car and you'd hit the seek button, and it would just go to the next point, the next odd number. All right. Oh, good. I'm glad it's working now. I think that would be a little bit ridiculous. A lot of people spending money but not getting any viewers. That would be something that wouldn't be beneficial for them in the long run. So it's the fear, right? This is what always grows the government. This is what always gives the government power, is that fear, right? If we don't have the government controlling this, then we're going to lose control over it. We're going to lose the capacity for the good people to do the good things, and only bad people are going to take over it. I think that is just exactly what it is, and that's fear mongering. That's the fear. The only rich would have radio towers big enough. But right now, even then, the rich only have radio towers big enough, right? Because only those that are able to afford it are able to do this. Exactly right, Richard. Wait, don't allocate the frequency. Don't regulate it. Don't control it. If people don't want to tune in, allow that to be what causes them to fail. Allow the free market, allow the people, the society to decide on what radio stations are allowed to continue on or what's not allowed. Because if you have a crappy radio station, if you have no viewers, you won't have any sponsors. You won't have anyone paying for the advertisements. Then people are literally dumping their money into a radio station that is giving them no revenue, right? And there's no worth to that. There's no value in that. Nobody spends money without anything coming back to them. Anybody smart, anybody competent, at least, right? And so we have to understand that. And so the FCC on this one, I think, was wrong. Even if it was just a pirate radio station, even if it was just a radio station that was coming out and broadcasting things, the Alex Jones thing, I think that was just a way to conflate the two to be able to make it a bigger thing. But it's really not. It's not something big. I appreciate it, Herman. Thank you for the beard compliment. Always appreciate those. We got the 2 beards on today, so it's always a good day. So it's. The FCC, it's just despicable in the way that it functions, the way that it runs. Just like most things with the government, it's overbearing, it's over-controlling, and it doesn't provide a better society in the long run. This is just another one of those stances in which we can look objectively at the government. We can objectively look at another department of the government and say, what the heck is the FCC really doing, right? They're limiting what people can say. You can't say this word. You can't say that word. You can't do this. You have to pay for your permit in order to speak out on our platform. You have to – it's just that level of disgusting control. There's no necessity for it. If we want to rein back the government's control – it's not that we just pick one topic or another topic and we say, this is the topic we're going to focus on. We need to push back on all topics. That includes the FCC. That includes on committing acts of terror in other countries like Yemen, of literally hitting a warhead onto a school bus filled with children, right? We need to push back on that. We need to push back on the laws which incriminate people without a victim, right? We need to push back on everything that has grown the government out of its control because the government said, look, if we don't control this, then it's going to be anarchy. It's going to be detrimental to society. And we have to be the police on that. We have to be the police on our society, not the government. The government is there to protect us, not to provide to us, not to control us. And that's really the biggest push that we need to do is push back on that. When words hurt, everyone is a victim. Yeah, and it's that old homage that has been lost, and that is, sticks and stones may break my bones, except for in 2018. Ooh, don't hurt my feelings. You hurt my feelings, you broke my arm, right? It is disgusting. The standard of restricting speech on broadcast media being eliminated would be a good first step. Absolutely 100% agree. If the government isn't silencing us, but we have social media platforms silencing us, right, that puts a bigger divide between the two, and that actually pushes back on that technocracy, right? Something that we were talking about last week. Chris Ann Hall had one of her guests on, and he was talking about technocracy, which is something that has been talked about pretty prevalently in the UK and Europe, where the tech companies are able to manipulate themselves and have more control. But we don't talk about that here. We are completely ignorant to that. How many people, for the first time today, that's the first time they've heard the term technocracy, right? When technology is the dictator, is the controlling factor in your country, in your society. And that's what we really need to start pushing back on. And we need to make that divide larger by not having the government and the social media platforms being almost synonymous in some ways, right? So the FCC is doing the same thing that the social media is. We can't fight back against the social media other than not utilizing these platforms in which they grew on, not paying for the advertisers, not actually being involved on those things. How's it going, Marie Mom? That's the way that we fight back on the social media. But when it comes to the government doesn't go away. The government never will go away just because we ignore it. The government will grow. That's what the government has done for the last centuries. And that's what it's done since really the founding of our country. We ignored a lot of the things that we did, and it just kept growing. It kept growing, and it kept justifying its growth. And it is busted out of the shackles of the Constitution. It's a huge, major, fundamental issue, and not enough people are being informed on this topic. If you guys want to know more about the Constitution, if you guys want to learn about the history of it, somebody I mentioned earlier in the show, Chris Ann Hall, Krisanne Hall. Go check her out. Go listen into her podcast. Go watch her YouTube videos. She is a fantastic, beautiful woman who speaks so eloquently and so bluntly about the Constitution, about its founding, about the original intent from the founders, right? This is not to grow the government. This is to say, look, this is where the government has blown out. If you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat, it doesn't matter. You will like her message if you like the Constitution. You will get a fundamental understanding, and that's important. The other topic that I wanted to how'd you like her, Lynn? So Lynn said, Chrisanne Hall, I listened to her the other day for the first time. How did you like her? Did you enjoy her? I love her. I listen to her all the time. She's actually is one of my most frequent listened to podcasts. I listen to her, and I listen to a couple of libertarians, a couple conservatives, and a couple progressives even. You gotta be eclectic when you're finding your information, right? Because you don't want to just sit there and listen to your conscious bias. You don't want to just listen to your own party. She was a little too cerebral for me. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I love her though, regardless. Got her on. I appreciate it, Rick. Appreciate the support, man. The next topic I wanted to talk about was Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison is Keith Ellison was a member of Congress from Minnesota. He was in there. He was the first Muslim elected to Congress, and that was a big news, right, for the intersectionality left. They thought this was beautiful, right? We have a Muslim in office. It's fantastic. This is what's important for the country. We're moving forward because we're electing somebody out of the normative viewpoints, which is Christian, Catholic or Jewish or whatever, right? We got somebody out of the norm. We got somebody that's been the minority or the oppressed into office. Well, Keith Ellison has decided that he's no longer going to run for Congress. He's not going to run for re-election. And so now, instead of running for that, he's running for Attorney General of Minnesota. He started running. He's been running on his campaign. He's been going out, door knocking and everything else. And one thing that came up was his ex-girlfriend of 3 years ago said, hey, he abused me. I have a video of it. I'm not willing to share it. And she told the story. The story is definitely plausible. It's definitely something that can happen for any man to any woman, right? On any given day, anybody can become violent. So I'm not questioning the exact situation. I'm not questioning if it was possible. I'm questioning the fact that she has refused to provide that information. I understand that this is, in this day and age, if you provide information against somebody, there is a lot of societal pushback, right? You can provide something where this person punched me in the face. Here's the video evidence of it. And somebody would think, I like Hermit. And somebody would say that you fabricated it. Somebody said you would lie about it. And somebody would be willing to even make death threats against you. So I understand that aspect of it, but there's no justification. Anyone on any day can be violent. Yes, absolutely. Anyone can. You can be. Just because you haven't been violent before doesn't mean that you can't have a day in which you snap and you commit an act of violence against another one. That's fine. But the important thing on here is the discussion about what happened. So she's willing to come out and talk about the story. Oh, no, I absolutely agree with you, Andrew. Absolutely 100% agree with you. His comment was some people have a higher propensity to violence, though. Yes, some people are more likely. But the point is that anyone on any given day is capable of these acts of violence. So she was willing to come out and say the story and talk about it in detail. She was laying on the bed. She was listening to a podcast. He comes in. He says something to her. She didn't hear it. He says, "Did you hear me?" She shook her head no. And he then became violent. He started trying to rip her off the bed, called her the B word, tried to rip her out of the bed, and told her to get out of his house, this, that, and the other. Is that a sign that that's the person he is? Is that the sign of he was having a bad day? We don't really have enough information on that, but that video is going to be key. She needs to actually come out and release that video. If that's going to be a big stance for her, if that's going to be something that she wants to talk about, right now it's he said versus she said. She needs to, if she wants to actually make impact, actually come out and provide that video. Because I want to make this a very clear point to anyone and everyone. If it's a he said versus she said, the she said is on fire. I hate that commercial. If it's a he said versus she said, then you're going to make it a political thing, right? Conservatives are saying Keith Ellison is a horrible, horrible individual, and liberals are going to say he's a fine man. She's just slandering him because of the timing, because he's running for attorney general. She's trying to slander him to prevent him from getting this next position. So that timing is very important as well, right? He's running for office right now. This happened 3 years ago. It took her 3 years to build up the courage to the time that he was running on a campaign to come out and talk about this. If she wants to make an impact, what she has to do is actually provide that video evidence. Until then, it has become a political issue. It has become a partisan issue. And that's not what we should be working for. That's not what anyone in this country should be striving for, is to create more political division, right? We have plenty of that. If somebody mentions anything about abortion, right, that's a politicized discussion. If anyone mentions war, if anyone mentions school, if anyone mentions like the whole litany of things, this is we are in a mentally and intellectually very volatile and angry, divisive country right now, and she's just adding fuel to that fire until she does provide that evidence, and that's something that she really does need to do, in my opinion. While we're talking a little bit about Democrats, while we're talking about the DNC, Nancy Pelosi just made news again, right? Can't have enough controversies on the left. So the controversy right now, not really controversy, the story is talking about the future of the Democratic Party in the House specifically. Nancy Pelosi right now, she's looking like, if they become the majority, she would be the next House Speaker. That's fine. That's all fine and dandy, right? She can be whatever she wants to be. There's discussions and a murmur within the party. I will answer that question right after this. Hermit, that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. There's a murmur that other people are going to start challenging her. We've been talking about this for a little while. We've been talking about what's going on in the Democratic Party. We've been talking about Ocasio-Cortez, whatever her name is, Cortez, right, from New York. Should she be elected into office, what she's going to be doing in the future, how she's going to be, by the head of the DNC. He's saying, look, she's going to be the new face of the Democratic Party. Oh, I appreciate it. You have a really long name, like cantography. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. If she's going to be the future of the party, she's maybe be able to contend for a fight for the head of the party. That may not be something that happens in 2018. That may be something in 2020, 2022, 2024, etc. That may be something that does come about. But there's discussions of even the number 3 guy from my state, from South Carolina. I apologize. I'm drawing a blank on his name. He's saying, look, if Nancy Pelosi doesn't run for it, I will happily step up. I will take in that position, and I will grow that on my way. Is Nancy better than a full socialist? Yes, Nancy is better than a full socialist. Nancy is definitely a moderate when it comes to the corporate Democrats and the socialist Democrats, the divide between the two. So Nancy Pelosi is kind of the fine line in between. If you want a representative that is, if you're a Democrat and you want a representative that's going to be able to pull both sides together a little bit in order to, yes, absolutely pegged it. If you want the party to grow with her as the speaker, then that is somebody that you want. She's already shown that she's not afraid of controversy. She's not afraid of standing up and talking to the House for, 8 hours about DACA people, right? About anecdotal stories of DACA people. She's shown that she's willing to do a lot of things. She's been in office for quite a while. She's shown temperament and the ability to really bring together both sides, or to both sides of her party. So that's Nancy Pelosi, I would say, is the best choice for the Democratic Party. If you're a Republican, I think that you would also agree with that, right? Nancy Pelosi is somebody that is a little bit deranged. She's somebody who has lost a little bit of the grasp on the fundamentals of what the moderates in this country or the independents of this country want. And so by her pushing that way, with her standing so strongly on her principles, which are left of the independents in this country, that is something that could be beneficial for the Republican Party as well. So we can see that different shift there. So I think it would be best for both parties, really, if Nancy Pelosi does become the speaker, should they become the majority. Now, if they become the majority, that's a whole nother discussion. We'll have that at another time. If Cortez loses, I'll be highly surprised. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see that race. I know that the guy that's running against her, if you guys follow quite frankly, he's on Periscope. He's on YouTube. Check him out. He's a fantastic guy. He's actually spoken with the candidate running against Cortez and is trying to advocate and help him out. We saw last week where Ben Shapiro said, Cortez, are you willing to debate me? I will give you $10,000 to your campaign or to the charity of your choice. And she said, that's catcalling, that's sexist, blah, 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 blah. And then not even a day later, she's walking into her competitor's office and shouting at him and trying to get him to make a debate. So we can already see the hypocrisy. This is why she's on the left. This is why she is being viewed as the next leader of the Democratic Party. It's really amazing. So the question was, why did you choose to start speaking out on your channel? So the answer to that, why did I start speaking out? I'm going to go through the entire history real quick on that. I started off doing YouTube or doing Facebook Live videos actually on my personal page during the campaign, during the 2016 campaign. And because I was watching the candidates, I was watching Donald Trump, I was watching Hillary Clinton, I was watching Bernie Sanders, and I was watching Gary Johnson. I was trying to watch as much as I could of these figures, and I was trying to show the lies that they were saying. And so I got involved with that, and I realized I somewhat had a knack for being able to understand and analyze these things. And so I wanted to help out others. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. So I started talking about it. I grew onto Twitter. I grew onto Periscope. And then now we are here on YouTube. And so I not only do I discuss politics from like a news side of things, from let's discuss what's actually happening, the current events, but I also talk about it on a philosophical side. A lot of my discussions cover it from a libertarian bias. I am a libertarian. I'm a minarchist, not an anarchist, not a classical liberal, but a minarchist, which just basically means that I want the smallest government possible in order to get out of our way and to grow the individual, to grow the smallest minority in this country, and that is you, the individual, to empower you as much as possible. So I talk about that. And we really talk about anything and everything. And so I'm always welcome to, if you guys see something in the news that came up, or you see an article online that not many people are talking about, you want to send that to me, always feel free to send that to me. Shout out Tom Woods. Yeah. Always feel free to send that to me. You can send me an email, mrbeardedtruth@gmail.com. You can send it to me on Facebook. You can send it to me on Twitter. The handle for Twitter is Mr. Bearded Truth. Facebook.com/JLyon, JLYON, Bearded Truth. You send me a message there. Send me a message anywhere. Send it to me. Let's discuss it. I'm open for people utilizing my platform in order to discuss things that are happening. So I hope I answered that question to you in kind of a full extent, Hermit. I hope that satisfies your question. So the Nancy Pelosi situation, it's going to be interesting. I don't think that she's going to lose it. I think that she's going to maintain the position in which she's in. I don't think that there's going to be enough opposition. One hope that I would really genuinely hope for, because I do greatly disagree with the Democratic Party and their platform, is that Nancy Pelosi maintains the seat, stays in that power, becomes the Speaker of the House whenever they become the majority, and that causes a bigger rift within the party. I want to see them divide. I want to see them hate each other, and I want to see that destruction be a huge fundamental issue for the Democratic Party going forward. The old hag judge. Do you think she'll last 5 more years? So Peg did ask, the old hag judge, do you think that she will last 5 more years? Why am I forgetting her name as well? Ruth Ginsburg. Ruth Ginsburg, the idea that she's going to last 5 more years, I'm not big on her health. I haven't been following it. I know that she's been falling asleep lately while on the bench while they were in session. I know that she's had some health issues Will she last the full 5 years? That's questionable. I think she's just the only terms in which she would not make it the 5 years is, of course, death. She's holding on for dear life because she doesn't want her position being given up. If she doesn't make the 5 years, Barrett, one of the candidates from Trump's Supreme Court picks, would probably be the likely candidate being selected or being nominated in her position. I think it would be very interesting to see. The one thing that really has been blowing my mind out, right? 5 years. 5 years from now, that is the election year. That is the year in which Mitch McConnell said, look, it is a presidential election year. We will not be nominating a Supreme Court nominee, right, with Garland. So having that, understanding that, if we go in and it is the last year of Trump, if it is the election year of Trump, right, and so let's say she makes it to 2024. And she passes or she retires for whatever reason. Is Mitch McConnell going to go back on the precedent that he proudly stood upon, or is he going to honor his word? That's going to be an interesting subject. I really don't have high faith in the Republican Party at all. I think that Mitch McConnell will fold on that. I think that he will just push it through. If the Republicans do have the Senate majority, they will get it in there in order to try to maintain control of the Supreme Court for the next 30 to 40 years until Democrats come into power. They're likely to try to push to increase the number of seats in the Supreme Court in order to wash out the Republican majority, if you will, or the constitutional originalist, as what they're more accurately described as. Whether they're a constitutional originalist in the absolute, that's false, right? They're not. They are the originalist only on certain aspects, right? Judge Kavanaugh, if he is not nominated, if he is selected to go to the bench, he is not strong on the Fourth Amendment at all, right? He has been weak on that. He's written a couple of decisions being very weak on that, but he is extremely strong on, say, the Second Amendment. I'm an independent. The two-party system is a joke. Critical thinkers are the crucible between the two. And that's why, Hermit, have you looked at the Libertarian Party at all? I know I'm a brand new member to it, and I'm already becoming somewhat of a shill for it. I just need to get paid for it. But have you looked at the Libertarian Party, looking to shake things up a little bit? I think that's going to be the party that does continue to grow and continue to pull in big numbers, right? Tom Woods, Jason Stapleton, Dave Smith, and a lot of other big libertarian pundits, if you will, commentators, have been pulling in large numbers of people to the Libertarian Party, specifically to the Mises caucus, and that growth could potentially swing some votes in local elections and cause some controversy and hopefully one day grow up to making it on the federal stage and making some significant changes there. So that would be something I would, maybe you can contact me on my personal page. We can talk about it. I would love to discuss with you about that. If that's not something you're interested in, I understand. No fault, no problem. But being an independent and hating both parties, the Libertarian Party just says, look, we want to take the power from both parties. We want to take the power from the government. And I think that would be the best way to go in the future. But I want to talk about Brennan. So the media has been hyped up over Brennan. Oh, my word. This man is getting his secret clearance revoked, or his top secret clearance revoked. His freedom of speech is being removed. Oh, horrible. Oh. All right. Constitutionality of this. All right. The president has sole authority to decide on what is able to be released and what is not able to be released. And so that would be something that by those constraints, by a what's the term for it? By utilizing that methodology, that ideology, he actually does have control on revoking personnel's security clearances, right? And so he's not in the wrong for doing it. I think he's in the wrong for the reason why he said that. Right? I disagree with what Trump does I hate Trump's justifications for why he does a lot of the things that he does. I detest them most times, more often than not. But I agree with the premise that the president can do this for whatever reason he wants to. And I also agree with the precedent that the president of the next administration can say, look, this person is not running things or is not pertinent to the future of my administration. I don't want their help, and I can remove their powers if need be. I'm cool with that. You don't need to come out and say, look, he's speaking bad about me. He's saying things that I really don't like, and therefore I took this action. I'm not sold on that idea. He dives it down into political justifications rather than necessity, if you will. That's where I think he went wrong on that. But he is well within his rights to do that, or within his powers enumerated by the Constitution in order to do that. It's not a freedom of speech thing. It's not silencing somebody because you're saying, look, you can't go and look at this classified information. You can't talk about this classified information. You no longer have a clearance. It's really not that big of a freedom of speech issue. It's really just a weak argument right now. It's people diving down into the pettiness of it and just creating more partisan issues. It needs to stop. It needs to be fixed. And the media focuses on the worst things possible, the most petty of things, instead of just going, hey guys, he has the authority. We elected him. Elections have consequences. We don't like this consequence, or we like this consequence. Game over. Instead, they spend hours upon hours just rambling and talking about the same thing over and over and over again, right? Wall-to-wall coverage. Brennan's got his security clearance taken away. It's horrible. Or the other side, he's a commie. He's just a commie. Take it away. Bah. Like, really? It's really not that big of a deal. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Stop it. Stop making people care. I'm so tired of the media trying to spin people up and get people worked up over small, insignificant ideas such as that. But I digress on that. It's there's a couple other stories I wanted to cover with you guys as well. But it's like, can we all try to be a little more principled? Constitution this, Constitution that. Someone else rants about these topics all the time. Oh, I will happily rant and rave about the Constitution any day of the week, right? Because every time the Constitution is being violated, or anytime the Constitution is being adhered to, I think it is warranted. It is important that the public talks about that. I think that that's what's important, because we are the keepers. We are the watchmen over the government, and it's important to us to ensure that the government follows those things and not try to make it a partisan thing when people violate it or they do not. But here's a good one. In Detroit, Representative Betty Cook Scott, she has an Asian opponent in the congressional race, and she made some racist remarks. Now, Betty Cook Scott is a black woman. She's a person of color. And she called her Asian opponent Ching Chong. Ching Chong. Now imagine if this was a Republican candidate. Imagine for just one moment. The media would be blowing out the coverage, right? Brennan would not be a discussion right now. It would be, look how racist these Republicans are, because every Republican is the same as this candidate. It's disgusting. Right? It's disgusting racism. I don't care what skin color a person is. If you're racist or you're being racist against another person, accept it as such, and it should be reported on if you're going to report on it from the other side. It needs to be covered more heavily, and I'm so disgusted with the idea that it hasn't been covered. It hasn't been covered by any major news outlet. Just not a word. No care. No worries. We can have somebody that is a Democrat, right? Both of these are Democratic candidates. I forgot to mention. Both of these are Democratic candidates. One said a racist remark about the other one to multiple voters, including the candidate's husband, and nothing was said. The silence is deafening on a lot of these stories. Ugh. It's just so frustrating to see that. And then also the Washington Times. The Washington Times came out with a study, or came out with a report stating that in 2008 election, as many as 5.7 million non-citizens had voted in the election. This is, of course, coming back up. This was an article that was written last year, but voted in the 2008 election. So the reason why this is coming up now is, of course, November's coming up around. Anytime that these elections are coming around, the discussions around illegal votes, around non-citizen votes, these are always a big point of contention, right? 5.7 million votes would be a huge swing for a lot of states, from most states, really. But of course, these are distributed throughout the country. It's not in just one state at all. But understanding this, thank you, Skeeter. Understanding that the illegal vote has influenced the election in some capacity. It's amazing how the left is okay with this, but they don't want foreign nations infiltrating our elections. They want the integrity of our elections unless it comes to illegals. I'm on the side that illegals should not be voting in your election. Wow. I'm sorry, Richard. I'm just getting silenced because, it is what it is. It's Periscope. Welcome to Periscope. I'm on the side that, yes, illegals should not be voting in our country. If you're not a citizen, you don't get a vote on how our citizenry is conducted, on how our government that is supposed to be providing to or protecting just the American citizens or just protecting the sovereignty of our country. You don't get to really influence that. It's going to be a big point of contention coming up in November. Anyone who loses by a narrow margin on the Republican side, they're going to immediately exclaim that it was illegals. Any Democrat that loses by just a narrow margin, they're